If you want to grab our men's lifestyle supplement, Male Advantage ebook, or my personal workout and diet plan, all links are in the bio. Okay guys, welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be talking about Dana White's Male Advantage journey, which I think personally is a very good one to do. This is what I try and do with these journeys. You know, I could do very similar ones. I could go for the big name and whatnot that gets the views. But what I like to do is find like variations of different journeys. So I think we can all agree that Dana White isn't exactly the best looking guy in the world. I think he'd admit that himself. What is he? He's 5'9", he's bald, you know, he's not in great shape, and I think it's very good to look at the fact that there's more than one way to skin a cat, okay, which is an old, I don't know if you use it in the US, but it's an old UK saying, and it basically revolves around the concept of, you know, you don't have to get to the same journey using you don't have to get to the same destination using the same path, so that like, there's a lot of younger guys in the world that will, and especially on this channel, and this is completely normal because I probably thought the same when I was young, but you very much just assume that if you're a handsome, tall guy, that's it. You know, it's game over. It's GTA cheat code level. You've got everything you ever want in life. But I would say it works in about 5-year blocks. It's like every 5 years you grow up from like 20. So by the time you get to like 25, the game completely changes. By the time you get to 30, the game changes again. And every step of the way, other things matter more. Now, I'm not saying if you're a tall, handsome guy that's not going to be useful. Like, you could be 60 and that's going to be useful, okay? But at the same time, other things matter more. And getting to that end goal of having a good life as a man, because that's all this is about, guys. Like, I might mention women, I might mention cars, I might mention a house, being a boss, you know, running the show, having loads of money, all this different shit, being in shape, whatever. But it all just revolves around having a good life, you know? So when people say, oh, this guy's obsessed with women, attracting women, or with money and whatnot, it's like, no, but these things make you happy, right? If you're like some 40-year-old guy who's out of shape, ugly, no money, no women chasing you, I mean, it's not an ideal scenario, is it? Nobody's going to be happy with that. Nobody wants that scenario in their life. But you get somebody, it doesn't have to be a Dana White, but somebody who's done well for themselves in business, you know, might be a bold guy, not that tall, but dresses well, super successful, has people working for him, super confident because of what he's achieved. You know, and the women that might be chasing him might be 6s out of 10, but that's a far greater life than being sat there at 40 years old feeling suicidal, eating pizza alone on a Friday night in some tiny little box flat, and your boss is on your ass every single week. People think you have to have the perfect life. And I've often said on this channel, I'm aiming to become the perfect man. I think I'm lucky enough to be in a position where my foundation and my starting base can put me there. Okay, I think like there's a certain level of intelligence you might need. I'm like 6'1", 6'2", naturally good genetics with my frame and stuff like that for like body and whatnot. So I think I can like go really far. That's just my personal journey. But if I was born as like the ugliest, shortest guy, I'd still be like, fuck, let me do something to rise up this ladder. Let me make the best of my scenario. Because there's so much more that I can accomplish here. And Dana is a great example of that. Like, he's a boss. That's what he's achieved. He's achieved fucking Marvel boss status. Like, he's on such a high level. He looks like Kingpin. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's an attractive quality, number one, in the eyes of women. Number two is fucking, it's like an unbelievable feature to pull off in the eyes of men. Like, other men look at Dana White and they're like, this guy's a boss. Like, yeah, he might be out of shape. He's been in shape in his life. His diet's a little bit shit, quite frankly. But, you know, that's up to him. That's what he wants to do. But the guy's got a fantastic life. Like, he's doing cool shit. He's in a fantastic position. He's got a ton of money. He's got power. He's got access to, like, beautiful women. He's around these beautiful women all the time. Like, yeah, let's say he might not be sleeping with all of them. There's rumors that he does sleep with most of them, okay? But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. There's rumors that he pays escorts or prostitutes for the night. I'm sure they're beautiful. Like, he's got the money to do it and it won't affect him. He's still got a cool life. It's still better, like I said, than sitting in a fucking tiny little apartment somewhere, just pissed off with life, angry at everybody. Every woman's turning you down. Nobody showed you any respect. Your assets are shit. You look like shit. Like, people don't understand that you don't have to go on this same journey. You don't have to look like David Gandy or Luke Rockhold or Juan Betancourt or Broderick Hunter. You don't have to look like one of these guys to have a great life. You just play your cards. You make the best of what you've got. You put yourself as high as you can in multiple areas, my straight 7 system, and you become an outlier male. Now, Dana's taken that to an extreme because of, his wealth and I guess his clout, like who he is and his life, like his life setup. But at the same time, like I was saying, guys, you don't need to worry too much about like what cards you're dealt with. You just need to get to that end journey. And that's what Dana's done great, and that's what we're going to look into today, okay? So, first things first, Dana dropped out of college. So he was born in Boston. He wasn't from a wealthy background at all. He actually had a really difficult upbringing, but he dropped out of college twice. So, to start with, we can't make any excuses here and say this guy was lucky. Okay, so he got to 19 years old and he worked a series of jobs, including valet, bouncer, bellhop, which we've got a picture of here. And apparently when he was a bellhop, from a young age, he just knew that he was into fighting. It was boxing to begin with. He just knew that he was really, really into it. I don't know if that is Dana, to be fair, but it does look a little bit like him. It's just what people have posted, so fair enough, it might be. But the bellhop guys were running a sort of fight club. This is what I've heard. They were arguing over tips, and they take it, if they were disputing a tip, they'd take it down to like the cellar, the basement, whatever it might be, and they'd run like a little fight club. There was no punching to the face for obvious reasons. You couldn't like have a black eye on the job because somebody would find out. But wrestling, body punches, leg kicks, stuff like that, it was all fair game. And I think Dana at that, could see what was going on there and probably got a little taste for it, plus his love of boxing as well. Now, I've seen interviews before with Dana where he said it as a bellhop, he just got pissed off one day. He was just like, fuck this isn't going to plan. I'm not enjoying where this is headed. Like, my life's not really going anywhere. So one day he quit as a bellhop and he started training boxing classes. Okay? So this is pretty nuts, right, guys? Because you'll think to yourself, how do you start the UFC? Like, if I were to sit here now and say to you guys, anybody could run the UFC. Anybody could have started the UFC. Oh yeah, Chris, because I've got millions of dollars. But here's how Dana started. He started doing boxing classes. And I think, there's caveats that will come into this later on. There's maybe a crossroads that will be the big pivotal decision that led to Dana being who he is today. But at the same time, guys, people often forget this. If you want to be an actor, you might have to start doing low-level local wrestling. Right? So some people have done that and then gone all the way on to wrestling. Gone all the way on to Hollywood movies, big budget movies. And they started off doing local wrestling, their local leisure centre or something like that. Or they started off as a personal trainer, got in shape, got scouted. Somebody said, hey, do you want to do this wrestling thing? Next thing you know, they're an A-list celebrity. You don't know how the journey unfolds. You just have to start somewhere and go, step by step. And Dana started doing boxing classes, which eventually became pretty successful. And he started doing it with bigger classes. So I think it was one-to-one to begin with. He was basically a boxing personal trainer, just keep fit. And then he expanded those classes, let's say 30, 40 people per session, boxer size type of thing. That is how you start in your journey to owning the UFC. Does anybody else find that as mental as me? And that is how you start on your journey to owning the UFC. You become a personal trainer who coaches boxer size. That's mental, right, guys? And people often forget that. It's the same with mine. I started a blog. Eventually, it will be a streaming platform. And how did I start out in the early days? Well, I was a personal trainer. I was into men's fitness. How does that all unfold? It's nuts. It's just a step-by-step process. And everybody always looks at big picture. How do I... if I were to sit there on day one and say, how do I create a Netflix for men? I'd probably shoot myself in the face. But to think to yourself, okay, I'll do it stage by stage. And eventually the vision unfolds. People in the early days, it's just a vlog. Sorry, it's just a blog. You're going nowhere with this. With Dana, it's probably he had all these massive ambitions, and people were probably saying to him, yeah, but how are you ever going to achieve that? You're just a personal trainer. You just teach boxing classes to local people and kids. Like, you're not going to make big money doing that. And it's like, no, it's a way of getting capital. It's a way of getting some money under your belt to gain experience, to, learn the ropes a little bit more, to then move to stage 2 and stage 3 and stage 4. It's just a necessary part of the game, okay? Now, here's something quite interesting that's going to come in later on. Dana actually got beaten up when he was 21 years old. So he was doing the box size thing for 2 years there. At 21, he got beaten up and he developed Meniere's disease, which it's like dizziness and vertigo. It comes from getting hit in the ear multiple times. That's what happened to him. Well, it can happen multiple ways, but that's how it happened to Dana. And this will become apparent later on down the line. As I tell you guys, if you achieve success, you can tick all the other boxes after in like the space of a week or a month. Like, I'll explain it later, but it will make sense. But it's just worth putting into his timeline there. Now, the next big moment of Dana's life is he met the Winter Hill Gang. Now, some of you may recognize the guy both of them to be fair, from the film Black Masked. And that featured Johnny Depp, and he played the guy on the left, Whitey Bulger. And the Winter Hill Gang was a gang that was operating in Boston at the time, and they heard that Dana was making money from his boxer-size thing. Imagine that, guys. You finally get somewhere, you're making money, and these guys show up, and they're like, hey, you owe us $2,500. And they were going to probably ask for that every single month. It's what a nightmare of a situation. And then Dana refused to pay it. He got a phone call the next day saying you've got 24 hours to pay it. And immediately he called the airline, booked a ticket, went straight to Vegas within like the next couple of hours. That was it. He was gone. So Dana now lives in Vegas. That's where he basically runs all his operations. That's where the first UFC pay-per-view event that Dana held was hosted. And that's where he began. Okay, so you got to think about that, guys, right? So he's 23 years old. He hasn't come from a decent family. He's had a tough upbringing. He's worked multiple, shitty jobs, if you would. He's managed to finally do something with his life. And these guys show up. Like, he gets Meniere's disease. And then, by getting beaten up by these guys. And then another gang shows up and says, hey, you owe us rent every single month. You're going to pay us $2,500 for the earnings that you've brought in. Like, people think they've got it tough in life. Like, how am I supposed to move forward, Chris? But I don't even have this. I don't even have that. It's like, do you have a gang showing up at your door asking you for rent? Like, that's tough. And Dana just got the fuck out of there, which I think is a fantastic decision. So at 23, he's arrived in Vegas. Clearly doesn't have much money because he couldn't pay the $2,500. And he's having to start again in a completely new city. Vegas as well, which is quite like dog eat dog, so he's had to start all up again. That's a difficult situation. So how did Dana fight his way out of this? Well, he started his own clothing brand for boxers called Bullenheiser, which was named after the dog breed. And notably, Floyd Mayweather was wearing the brand in the early days in some of his early fights, which is quite interesting, actually, before he obviously became like the superstar Money Mayweather and started getting the big offers. But it's quite good that Dana managed to do that. I imagine he continued to do the boxer size type of stuff and just racked his money up. That's what you got to do. Just do anything you can to rack your money up. There's I think it's Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. They always say that you just need that first 100K. That's all you need. Once you get that first 100K, everything's easy. But getting that first 100K is the tough part. And they're like, work 5 jobs, save as much money as possible. Like, do whatever you can to get that first 100K. And then, start executing with that money and things will come together. And it seems as though that's what Dana did, okay? So while he was in Vegas, he managed to meet up with an old friend, Lorenzo Fertitta, which a lot of you guys will know was a pivotal part in his journey. Along with his brother, the Fertitta brothers, they owned a bunch of casinos, and probably most importantly, they were on the State Athletic Commission, which probably, gave them some leeway when it came to the UFC deal later on down the line. While they were out on a meal one night, they bumped into an MMA fighter called John Lewis, and he decided to teach all 3 of the men like how to fight, MMA and stuff like that, jiu-jitsu most notably, and all 3 became addicted. They were just like, we love this, because they were boxing guys before. They were trying to like get something going with boxing, trying to get like into the promoting business, and MMA just caught their eye. They just said, okay, we're in love with this. This is a fantastic sport. It's underutilized, and they started showing up and like attending UFC live events. And Dana said one thing that he noticed is like how sloppy and like undermarketed the events were. Like they just weren't done correctly. Like the rule set wasn't in place. It just didn't feel like a professional sports organization. He said it was just sloppy. Like the potential was there. The talent was kind of there. It had potential to be massive, and like people loved it, but it just wasn't done in the right way. It wasn't being run correctly. So that was the first time Dana looked at it and thought, I could do something with this. Now, after being around the UFC for quite a long time, it's funny to say Dana being around the UFC, but he wasn't the owner, isn't it? It's like, obviously, he went and bought it eventually. But it's funny that it existed beforehand and he just spotted an opportunity. Like I said, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can make it in life so many different ways. But after being around the UFC for a long time, people became familiar with Dana. He was training with a lot of the fighters. Obviously, he had a bit of money along with the guys that he worked with, the Fertitta brothers. So they started managing some of these fighters, including Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, so two of the biggest legends of the sport, which really allowed Dana to like take a look at the inner workings of the UFC, okay? Now, interestingly, during a contract dispute, he realized that the UFC was about to go bankrupt. So while he was negotiating a contract, I think it was for Tito Ortiz, he realized that, you know, they had no money left. That's obviously why he couldn't get more money for his fighter, which makes sense. So Dana went back to the Fertitta brothers, who obviously got all of the money, and said, look, we can buy this, we can get a deal sorted, and convince them to eventually negotiate for around about a month, negotiate over the period of a month. And the deal that they ended on was $2 million for 100% of the UFC, which in today's world was a steal. Probably one of the greatest investments in history when you actually look at how much it sold for later on down the line, but we'll get to that. So this led to Dana being put in place as the UFC president at 32 years old in 2001, and Dana owned 10% of the UFC. That's crazy, right, guys? That's basically a 10-year journey. So he arrived in Vegas at 23. By 32, he was the president of the UFC, owning a 10% stake. That's mental. Now, granted, his friends really helped him out there. They came in, you know, clutch with the money. But he spotted the opportunity, and Dana's put all the work in since then. You know, they were old friends of his. You know, like I said, there's more than one way to make it. So fair play to Dana. Like, yeah, he probably wouldn't have been able to do it without his friends. But at the same time, he spotted an opportunity. He sold it to them. Like, there's a skill within that as well, guys. But yeah, that's his 10-year journey. So like I said, he arrived in Vegas with nothing, worked his ass off for like 10 years, spotted this opportunity. He was still a manager in the UFC, still had fighters under his roster, like his own name, if you would. So it wasn't like he was doing nothing and just asked for money. Like, this guy was making his way, he was like worming his way into this business. You know, he was probably considered quite high up in the organization. Like, he was a well-known guy. Like, it's not exactly like he just said, oh, guys, put some money towards this and I'll like step in. Like, he already knew the ins and outs. Like, these guys with money, they're not stupid. They obviously said, hey, yeah, look, Dana, we're going to need to see a pitch here. We're going to need to see a plan. Like, what's your idea behind it? So all in all, fair play. He's used other people's money. He's negotiated really well with them. He's obviously laid out the plan. He's convinced people. That's not easy to do. It's not easy to convince rich people about a vision. Okay, so we get to a point now where Dana's 32 years old. He's the president of the UFC. He's got money. He's in a good position. But he's got the receding hairline. He's wearing oversized suits. He's lacking confidence in the interviews. You know, his teeth are obviously not fantastic. Just looks like a kind of young boy here that's been put in a premium position. Whereas compared to here, he looks like Kingpin from Marvel. Like, he looks like a end-game boss, you know what I mean? End-level boss or something like that. But here, you've got like some young kids. Just looks awkward and whatnot. It's just like that's a journey that every man's going to go on at some point. You just don't understand little elements like, oh, he's wearing the tie to dress up. Here, he's got a couple of buttons undone. It's just a mindset shift. That's what that is. Like, here, I want to impress people. Here, I'm the boss. I don't give a fuck. Like, it's a big difference. It really comes off. It really like comes off in your personality and your behavior. So the first year in the UFC, it was almost like the compound effect, where like I've said to you guys before, the compound effect of age in a male life, where you've put all this work in the early days, and it kind of culminates at a certain point, like everything just kicks off. Well, in that first year, everything just kind of came together for Dana. Like all that hard work over those years just kind of came together, okay? And the first thing he did, he had to buy back the rights to the brand and the website, which actually UFC.com stood for user-friendly computers. So he just had a lot of fucking work to do, a lot of branding, a lot of marketing work to do. First thing he did as well, he looked into the rules and the regulations of the UFC, he cleaned it up a little bit. You know, you could kick people on the floor when they were stood on their knees. It was quite barbaric. You could land a headbutt. Like it didn't attract the mainstream. It attracted a certain type of audience that they didn't really want, okay? And obviously because of this led to a lack of sponsorship. It led to a lack of deals. Like nobody wanted to do a pay-per-view event. Everyone was putting the phone down when Dana was calling. So it was tough, but he had to put all these things in place. It was almost like the finishing touches, the cherry on top. And this is why Dana has such a good relationship with Donald Trump as well. Because Donald Trump decided to host the first UFC pay-per-view event at his casino, which was an absolute game changer. The amount of views that they got, the amount of publicity that they got, you know, it was a massive event. And with the new rules and regulations, it was something that really caught the eye of the mainstream. So that there was all in a year. Dana was still 32, roughly 33 years old, but that was all within the first 12 months. So as you can see, it kind of went from, you know, Dana wasn't struggling in life. He'd built his way up to a decent level, but things really got going. I mean, if you're doing a pay-per-view event at one of Donald Trump's casinos in Vegas, that's quite a change from like being in gyms and just doing boxercise with people. Like that is the big time at that point. And a lot of shit just came together for Dana. And one thing I love about Dana as well is like we saw that with COVID. He was the only guy who was still trying to put sports events on. Well, the UFC, I know it wasn't, you know, technically his money, but they were $40 million in debt by obviously chasing exposure. And they were losing money on every single event, but gaining in size. So he could see that long-term vision. And the Fertitta brothers wanted to cash out. They were ready to cash out. And Dana kind of convinced them to stay in. You know, they had a change of heart. He obviously wanted them to stick around. They had a change of heart, but Dana wasn't going anywhere. Like he was staying in it. He had his vision. I love that about the guy. I think he's fantastic in that sense. And this is when he came up with the idea of the Ultimate Fighter. So it's a reality TV show that was more targeted towards a mainstream audience. And here's one thing that I really love. This is something that I do in my business as well. It's like with my book. Nobody wants to publish my type of book. Of course they don't. Nobody's coming at me with deals. Like it's the male advantage. They hate that sort of stuff. They want like a nice chick flick type of book. So what did I do? I published it myself. I paid to publish it myself, right? And this is what Dana decided to do. He was getting no offers to produce the show. So he said, hey, you know, the UFC are going to produce this ourselves. And once you've produced it yourself and you've put your money up, you know, somebody like Spike TV came along and said, hey, look, we'll air it for you. Because there's not really a risk for them because you've produced it, you've put all the money in, you've spent all the time. So if a network wants to air it, then, you know, there's a little risk for them. And with this type of work rate that was going on from Dana, you know, where he's focused purely on money, we can see he got to a point where he didn't look too good. Okay, so he's a little bit out of shape. Bold guy, just hasn't really taken care of his looks. He's been all about that money, okay? And this happens a lot. A lot of guys do this where they're just so focused on getting the money up that their appearance just diminishes. They just don't look too good. Like everything starts to fall apart. It's almost like a necessary sacrifice. And then once you've ticked that box, you can kind of like switch over and really focus on appearance. Or you can do the two at the same time. You know, it depends how crazy your schedule is. I promote both at the same time, as I've told you guys before. I don't really like it when a guy's like 35, 40 years old, loads of money in the bank, but they're overweight and they look like shit. I just think, what a waste. Like, you made all this money, enjoy it. Like, it's not hard to keep yourself in shape, right? But a lot of guys kind of let themselves down in that sense. You know, and Dana got to a point where he had the money, he had the success, he probably had some level of notoriety and respect, but he didn't really have the look. And I think this is a trigger point in his life when he really started to sort a lot more shit out. So, like I said, Dana's not the best looking guy in the world today, but he certainly looks better than that. Okay? And he definitely looks better than that. Like, he's a completely different guy today compared to who he was. Like, that's not, like, he looks way better than that. That's like an awkward looking guy, okay? And this is like, it's a little bit later than what I would promote to you guys. I would say get in shape sooner. I think if Dana had done it along the way, and he just doesn't look like a guy who really gives a shit though, does he? Like, he doesn't, like, give me 2 years with Dana, I could improve him like 10x, but he just doesn't seem to care. I think he's more interested in the money. He's quite like an old school Boston guy. Doesn't really, like, it's just polo shirts, jeans, and trainers. Like, occasionally wears, like, suits for the big events, but I just don't think the guy really cares too much. But you guys can, okay? But this was 2011, so Dana was 42 years old. Now, ideally, you want to be doing this around 30, 32 years old, where, you know, you've nailed some sort of, like, your income's going up, but you've got in shape. Like, you've improved your looks, you've blended it all together so that you can enjoy it along the way. But this is where Dana really started putting everything together. So he went through a body transformation. He started to look completely different. He did improve his dress sense a little bit. The Ultimate Fighter was a massive success. It got millions of views. Advertisers, sponsors, season 2 deal with Spike TV came in. Like, everything just turned around. The UFC acquired Pride and Strikeforce, which led to massive names coming in like Ronda Rousey, Daniel Cormier, you know, who have ended up really pushing the UFC forward since. And they landed a 100 million per year TV deal. So at 42 years old, after all this work, Dana's finally putting stuff together, okay? In terms of, like, appearance, he's starting to look more like this. You know, he's starting to bring some stuff together, like the Dana that we know today. He's getting the teeth done, as we can see. He looks a little bit orange there, but, you know, he's probably been on holiday. It's just upgrading his life. He's probably buying more shit. He's probably buying some nice assets. You know, he's mixing the money with everything else that's going on in his life. So he's actually using his money now to, like, leverage other areas. And it's quite an interesting photo here, actually. We can kind of see it before. Now, granted, I imagine he's on steroids on the right. A lot of people have documented this. But it's kind of like awkward, chubby guy, whatever. This looks like a bouncer. Quite an attractive guy there, okay? If he were to get rid of the bloat, but I think his diet's really bad. But if he were to get rid of the bloat, get the body fat percentage down a little bit more, work on some jawline exercises. But like I said, I don't think Dana gives a fuck. I really don't think he gives a fuck. But here, with money and good assets and the power that he has, that's a high level guy. That's a high level guy. Like, that's top level, okay? And people always look at, people always say on the channel, like, they'll look at Dana the way he looks here, and they might be like, oh yeah, but ugly, bald guy, kind of out of shape, there's no way this guy's doing well in life. It's like, trust me, things change as you get older. How he look, like, he doesn't always look like he does on the right. Obviously, I think it's because of the steroids, but if he were to permanently look like he did on the right, and then drop his body fat down a few more percentages, you know, work on the jawline exercises, and I imagine from his diet, he just, like, slams carbs and doesn't really care too much about, like, salt intake. He's not really into that sort of thing. He's just, I imagine his workout plan was just get me on steroids, let me just do upper body exercises, because the guy's got tiny legs still. He doesn't really care. Like, we can see it here on this Men's Health cover. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, look at his legs. They look like they've never been trained, but his upper body and his face looks pretty fucking good there. Looks pretty lean as well. I imagine they could have edited it, but I think personally he's probably, like, been told to not eat any salt, not drink this, not eat that for, like, a couple of days before. And this is what would happen if Dana actually cared, okay? If Dana could actually be bothered and he trained legs. That's a pretty attractive guy. I don't care what anybody says. That's a quite attractive guy, and anybody can kind of reach this level. Alright, so he'd be in this sort of shape, looking pretty good, bigger legs, you know. Maybe you could chisel that jawline up a little bit more, but like I said, as a handsome guy with loads of money, power, notoriety, like, that's a good fucking life, guys. That's a great fucking life. And everyone thinks you have to be some stud, some Prince Charming with perfect genetics, a full head of hair, like the perfect DNA, like the ideal face shape, like a jawline that could cut glass. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect for you to have a fantastic life. Like I said, Dana could make it better. He just doesn't really give a shit. He obviously did in parts, but I feel like he just lets himself down with his diet. You know, we can see here, I imagine it's this sort of shit all the time. Like, he's eating with food puffing his cheeks out, so his face is going to end up being a lot thicker than it should be. It's going to look a lot more rounder. I've taught you guys about hollow cheeks before. Anybody who's confused, that's how you don't eat, okay? You don't just shove a big bite in your mouth and then shove it to one of the cheeks. Otherwise, this buccinator here, this muscle, is going to get thicker, it's going to pad out, it's going to give you the appearance of a puffy face. You know, but like I said, if I spent 2 years like helping Dana, plus if he got back into this shape and we could get his legs bigger, with the money that he's got, you know, wearing the suits that he wears now, like, that's a high level guy. And people might say, oh, that guy, you know, there's no way he's like getting girls. Look at the access he's got to these women though. Like, whether you think she's attractive or not, it's not really my type, but it's better. Like I said to you guys at the start, her on the left is 1,000,000 times better than being sat on your own in a flat, just no options. Like, imagine Dana here with no money, looking the way he does, just nothing going on in life, just depressed, you know, his old teeth as well, and just like, there's no way a woman like this would show him any attention. Okay, so he's hanging out with stars here. Like, there's no shortage of pictures with Dana with these women, so he's got access to them. Whether he's sleeping with them or not, it doesn't matter. He's always surrounded by beautiful women. He's the powerfulest guy in the room. He's always got access to them. Look, they don't seem upset to be around him. That's what I'm saying, guys. He apparently dated Ronda Rousey for a while as well. Like, this is 1,000,000 times better than Dana would be doing normally. Like, I think that's undeniable. Like, this woman on the left's probably about Dana's level. Like, the way he is now, if he puts on a suit, if he gets back in shape, like, he can have a woman. Like, I know he's got a wife, but this is probably like his top level. This or the redhead that I showed earlier. Guys, that's a fantastic life considering where he began. Like, most guys looking like that would be like, oh, I can't get anybody. But it's not a bad life, okay, guys? It's not a bad life at all. Like, you might as well improve. You might as well make the best of your situation. And like, Dana's mum, she's a little bit disgruntled with some things, but she's claimed before that his marriage is a sham and he sleeps with all the ring girls. Now, if that's true, these ring girls aren't exactly ugly, are they, guys? You know, we got one here, I think. Obviously, one there in the background. It might even be the same one. No, it's not. You know, they're not exactly ugly. If he's sleeping with all the ring girls, then, you know, fair play to him. Well done. Now, in more kind of recent history, if you would, I think Dana's life has reached, like, outlier male status. I think it really has. Even in his, like, he's closer, he's in his 50s now, so in his, like, late 40s, early 50s, I think he's got a cool life. Like, I think he's high level. I think he's definitely an outlier male. I think very few guys will ever reach the level that Dana's at now. And people will say, I'd rather be a handsome. It's like, guys, look at the fucking guy's life. It's amazing. Like, if you're handsome and tall but you're broke, trust me, life will catch up on you, and shit's gonna start going south. Shit's gonna start going south. Like, I'd much rather be the ugly rich guy who kept himself in shape than the handsome 6'5" guy with no money, no brain, etc. It just doesn't end well for that guy. Like, if you're 18 now, that sounds crazy, but I'm 29. Like, trust me, the handsome guys aren't doing too well in life. Like, yeah, they might have a few offers from women, whatever, but it's not the high-level women that they used to get. It's like 6s and 7s throwing themselves at this guy, but it's starting to dwindle. It's starting to dwindle, and they only stay with that guy for like 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, before they realize he's a bum, and then they like run away. Okay, a lot of guys would be like, well, it's better than me, I can't even get a woman. Yeah, granted, but trust me, it doesn't last long. Every 5 years, the game changes, and that's why I think Dana is just at a high level now. Obviously, after the New York event at MSG, that was almost like a crowning moment for the UFC, and the UFC sold for $4.2 billion, and Dana ended up getting around about $400 million from this deal. That's crazy, right, guys? About $400 million. What a cash out. Now, granted, he's put in the work, but what a cash out that is. He didn't have to put any money up, and he's cashed out on $400 million. So now he's got that serious cash. He's got that fuck you money, and you can see that in his persona. Like, I always watch, and I encourage you guys to do this, Dana White's post-fight interviews. After UFC events, he comes out in a suit, sits there with a bit of paper, talks to the media, and he just goes through the notes, and they ask him, obviously, various questions, and the way he handles it is like a boss. Like, he's the most powerful guy in that room. He's completely at ease. He's running the show. Like that is like I said, if he was in ridiculous shape and he would focus more on his appearance, I promise you Dana would be one of the most powerful guys in the world. Like in terms of outlier male status, he would be up there. Like he's got all the capabilities to be like some massively high level guy. I personally just don't think he really gives a fuck. At this time as well, they also got an ESPN deal, 1.5 billion per year. I mean, that's massive for the UFC. That allowed them to like kick on to the next level, and it obviously improves Dana White's life a lot. And if we just take a little look, guys, at Dana's life, look, here he is with the former president. Yeah, that's cool shit. Look what he's doing. He's doing speeches with the president, or the former president. Like, that's high-level stuff. Here he is with Conor McGregor. Obviously, this was a while back in New York, but he's doing these sort of things. He was going to the Mayweather fight, getting off the jet with Conor McGregor. Here he is, 10 times better dressed than he was before. He's the main guy here. He's handing out the belts. He's kind of like running the show that night. It's a completely different animal to the guy we met before. Hanging out with The Rock. Courtside with Floyd Mayweather. Like here, look at the shape he's in there. Like, yeah, he's kind of like puffy big. Obviously, he's on steroids. But like I said, if he can get rid of that puffiness and get down to a low body fat percentage, that's a really attractive guy. It's just, he probably won't bother doing it. And look at the difference here, guys. That was him in the early days. That's him now. That's a different animal. He's got less hair, but he looks like 10 times better. Like, it's such a step up. He's made the best of like the cards that he's got. Like I said, he's probably just like 7-8% body fat away and some puffiness in the face away from like having the perfect life and like probably training his legs as well. But again, like I said, Dana doesn't really give a shit. I think he's happy with how his life has gone. He's hanging out with beautiful movie stars. This is the UFC kind of complex. Like, there's an insane building. He's like walking around there. His office is in this building. Everyone's doing whatever he says. Like, he's running the show here. That's a boss life. They built Fight Island. He's traveling around the world, In Abu Dhabi on Fight Island, this was his pad. Like, this is where he's staying. This guy's got a cool fucking life. I don't care what anybody says. This is his £6 million house. He's got a gym built inside. The house is beautiful. Like, this guy's got a really, really cool life. And look where he's come from and look how he looks genetically. Like, this guy's made something massive of himself, okay, guys? And a lot of people just think everything needs to be perfect from day one. I'm finding that a lot in the comments at the moment. Like, it's just, a lot of guys are just like, oh yeah, but there's no point me starting because I'm at this level, or I failed at this, I'm 24 already, things haven't gone well. And it's like, guys, it takes a long time for a man to put things together. 90% of what you try when you're young will fail, and most things will fuck up. It takes a long time to put all these steps together. Yeah, you might not be the most handsome, you might not be the tallest, just play your cards. Play your cards and try and rise up. Things will get better step by step. So I'm not saying you're going to be 52 years old and finally things will come together. But if you work hard enough, by like 30, 32, you're 10 times better off than you were before. Well, which would you rather? You're still not a handsome guy, but your life is 10 times better than it was before. Well, that's fantastic. That's progression. 42 years old, your life's even better. You get to your 50s and you've just nailed it in all departments of life. You're completely happy with how things have gone. I just think that's such a better scenario than just sitting there and complaining. Like, I would say nobody watching this video would want to be Dana White from birth. But the situation that Dana's in now, let's say if he was 42 years old, if he was in perfect shape, like I said, he trained his legs, etc., dropped that body fat, got rid of the bloat around the face, I think 50% of guys in this chat watching this video now would be like, yeah, I'd take that. Especially the older guys, they might be like, yeah, I'd swap lives with him in that scenario. Like, he's made the best of himself. He's really, like, risen up. That's impressive. And as I said earlier, guys, once you start making money, you can put things right. So like I said, Dana wasn't in great shape. He went and got on steroids, probably got it all monitored by a doctor. Starts dressing better, wearing really nice suits. He goes and gets his teeth done. Like, these are things that can be done in, like, a week when you got money. He also went and got stem cells and got his ear problem fixed, okay? Like, he was suffering from dizziness and all these different issues with it. He couldn't hear out of the right ear. He went and got that fixed. Straight, you can go and tick boxes like that. You can go and pay a personal trainer. You can get a gym built in your house. Like, do you see what I mean, guys? You can put these things in place and you can set up that boss life. And that's why he is like fucking kingpin. Like he's just running the show now. So all in all, we got a guy who's now got a net worth of 500 million, makes around about 20 million per year. He's the UFC president, one of the most powerful men in the fight game. You know, he's 5'9", ugly guy, went bald early on, and born without money. I just don't see the excuses, guys. I really don't see the excuses. You know, and Dana's still like quite an awkward guy. Like his body language is a bit shit. He's very confident now on camera because obviously he's like probably proud of what he's accomplished and what he's done. He knows he's real for that. But it's a guy who doesn't really take care of his body, eats what he wants, probably working 18 hours a day. Like he could look so much better. Do you see what I'm saying? Like Dana could have gone from like lowest of the low. Like he could have gone from like bottom. Look at this. Like that's low down the scale, guys. With no money at the start, that's low down the scale, and that's where he began. And like I said, if he just got in shape, got rid of the puffiness, and like actually looked into appearance, and you know, put a little bit more effort into that area, which I don't think he cares about. Like I said, and that might be a signal that he doesn't need to care about him. He's like that tells me he's probably getting women. Like that tells me he's probably having a really good life. You know, he probably doesn't care too much. That's what it usually tells you. But he could do all that sort of stuff. And I just think from the point that he started at, a lot of guys might be at this level now where they look similar to this, or they can see their future head in there, or they're slightly better than this and they're complaining. Look what Dana's done. You know, it's fantastic. It's not a Chris Hemsworth journey. It's not Michael B. Jordan. You know, he's done it a little bit later than everybody else, but I still think it's fucking magical. I still think, fair play, Dana. I've got a lot of respect for that guy. I think he's worked his ass off. I think he's done everything he could. I think a lot of people give him shit. You know, like your own mum coming out and saying his marriage is a sham, he sleeps with all the ring girls. Like he's been through a lot, and I think fair play. Like he's grinded through it all. He's created a good life for himself. He's gone from that to, you know, a high level guy here who, you know, he's dressed well, looks like a boss, has money in the bank, assets, you know, surrounded by beautiful women all the time, has access to them, celebrity friends. Like it's just like fair play, Dana. That's all I can say is fair play. Like he's crafted something very, very well, and he was dealt the shittest hand to begin with. And I think a lot of guys are out there pissing and moaning, complaining, life's not good enough, like, oh, but it's easy for you, you're this, you're that, I'm this. Like it's just a lot of complaining. And I think once you get out in the world and you do something about it, this is when you end up with the Dana White style situation where your life, yeah, it might not be top level. I'm sure Chris Hemsworth has a better life, but at the same time, Dana's life's fucking amazing. And it's much better than being a 52-year-old man who complained all his life, sat there and did nothing, and now sits in an apartment alone every night contemplating suicide and hasn't touched a woman for 40 years that he hasn't paid for. Like, Dana's got a cool life. Dana's done very well for himself. I think a lot of guys can learn from this journey. If you want to grab our men's lifestyle supplement, Male Advantage ebook, or my personal workout and diet plan, all links are in the bio.